last
Yeah.
time.
Then let me do that, and it should just, hopefully, it just sends it to me when it's done.
Okay, perfect.
And thank you all for doing this.
Yeah, no, we're happy to do
Sure,
it.
of course.
I'm going to be very minimally involved. I'm homesick right now,
Oh,
and I'm just a mess. But I'll have my camera off, but I'm just kind of doing some of the background stuff. Oh, I see Erin. I'll admit her. And I'll let everybody else in at 7. So I think Officer Navarro should be coming in shortly. Oh, guess
oops,
I let her
sorry,
go.
I clicked admit. My
Okay,
bad.
that's fine. They'll just wait with us.
I won't do that again. I'll let you run that part of it.
That's okay. They're here now, and Officer Navarro's back.
Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself, officer?
Pretty good. Hey, thanks for the great idea about what numbers to call. I think it'll be a good opportunity to pass out a bunch of good info.
Yep, I'm excited for this and look forward to hopefully just sharing it in the newsletter as well, so we can get more people who can't tune in tonight. So I'll see what I can do to spread the word.
Sounds good. And then for our timeline, we're probably looking at maybe about 20 to 30 minutes of content of just information, and then 20 minutes of questions, concerns, anything like that. So we we
And
won't keep.
Aaron, yep, and Erin from OPA has been coordinating with various people to collect questions. I know she already sent you a few notes, and she's on the line as well.
Yep. So just let me know when that portion's starting and I'll ask away.
Perfect. Yeah, I think Officer Galvan collected those questions, so he's already got some answers, and a lot of those questions are going to be answered with the information we're going to provide. So yeah,
Perfect.
we'll just roll with it.
I'm thinking we can maybe just start maybe a few minutes after 7 to see if anybody's like trickling in. But we'll go ahead and get started right after that. I'll be sharing my screen and I have the PowerPoint up. So we'll have that pulled up, and then Officer Navarro and Galvan will be reviewing the information. Sorry, let me just jump back on really fast. Before everybody else got let in, I was explaining to Sean that I'm actually homesick right now. So I'm not turning on my camera. Have random cough attacks, have to go on mute. So I apologize in advance for that. But I'll be here if you need me to put anything on the chat, if you have any questions that come up, and I'll be just kind of navigating the PowerPoint.
Oh, we got Michael does. For everyone signing in, we're waiting just a few minutes, and then we'll get this started. And just so that we can respect everyone's time, I think we'll get started. I'll do a little bit of an introduction, and then hopefully anyone who's logging on a little later will still be in time.
I'm leaving.
So, okay. So, I'm Officer Navarro, Santa Monica Police Department. I'm the Neighborhood Resource Officer for the Beat 2 area. So my area of responsibility is essentially the south end of the city, from Pico Boulevard to the south end, from about, although I do a lot of work on Main Street, I typically go from 2nd Street till the east city limits. I'm gonna have my partner introduce himself a little afterwards, but as far as the nature of this class, so we've been recently putting together either classes or information sessions for what the community needs. Just recently, we put together a fraud prevention information seminar because there was a lot of families who became victims to a crypto scam. We also, me and my partner, we do the training for active shooter, active threats. It's called civilian response to active shooter events. We're always putting out flyers for those classes, those sessions. We do those in person and virtually. So this is another one of these information sessions that came up. Sean came up with an idea of, people were asking, hey, what numbers should we call? What are the best numbers? Do we call code enforcement? Do we call 911? What numbers do we call? So it gave us an opportunity to kind of basically put together a PowerPoint presentation, lots of phone numbers, lots of people to call for the most common things that we have. We're not trying to take up everyone's evening, so we're not looking at putting together a 4-hour presentation. We're just looking at 20, 30 minutes of information about the best numbers to call, what numbers you're calling, what information to give, how to get the best police response by calling, and then just some miscellaneous witness information, recommendations that we'd like from as the police department on how to best get information from the community. So we're looking at about 20 to 30 minutes of content, and then 15, 20 minutes of questions, concerns, anything that you folks or anybody from your group might have. So that's kind of what our timeline is. And I'll let, for the police department, we have Officer Galvan and we have Halima in the behind the scenes helping me with slides and PowerPoint. And we'll start off with Officer Galvan. Go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. How are you? Robert Galvan, Santa Monica Police Community Affairs. I've been with the police department since 2001. Born and raised in Santa Monica in the Sunset Park area. My parents still live in the same house on 31st Street. So I'm pretty well entrenched in the Santa Monica area. So I'm Edgar and I are both, we're the Beat 2 neighborhood resource officers. We will get into a little bit of the boundaries and who the other neighborhood resource officers are in a few minutes. But that's about it. I will we'll just let, well, Halima is sick, so we want to minimize her talking. So Halima is our civilian counterpart. She does security surveys. She has Halima is really Edgar's and mine. She's our boss. She tells us what to do, and she hears from the community. She passes the information to us, and we handle everything for her. So she handles everything for us. She's our IT. Edgar and I are not good with computers, but she is. That's and if you have questions, you can reach out. We'll put our names and our email addresses, phone numbers will be up in a few minutes. but you can reach out to us. You can reach out to Halima for security assessments, any type of questions. If you see or hear something on Nextdoor, or you see a post on Facebook or the neighbor app, and you think it's kind of weird and you want some more information about it, reach out to us and we can dispel if it's true or not, if it happened, if it didn't happen, where and when. That's everything. That's just some of what we could do for you. We'll get into the rest of it in a few minutes. Halima, is there anything else you want to say?
Nope, you covered it all. I just put our emails in the chat right now.
Okay.
Perfect. So, Officer Galvan is absolutely right about us not being very good with computers. He's got a funny story that he said he went to college his first semester and he didn't have a computer, and his kids were asking him, "How do you do college without a computer?" It seems such a it made so much sense then, but now it doesn't. So that's just funny. But yeah. So Halima will be behind the scenes. She'll be flicking our slides, and hopefully it's pretty smooth and clear. So on you, Halima, once you want to put the PowerPoint presentation up, and then we'll start this. Okay, so we just titled this Community Safety and Reporting. At the end of the day, we're hoping to do everything we can to try to keep the community safe, and to try to get as much reporting into the police department as possible. So everything that we can do to get folks to call. At one of the classes, we talked about should people call in, why or why not? Our view is why not? If you have a gut instinct about something telling you that you should call into the police department, call us. If it's not something that we can help, we'll let you know. But most of the time, when you feel that there's a need to call a police department, most of the time you're right. So we'll move to the next slide. Okay, so those will be our topics for tonight. We're going to go into our office, all the different resources, how to be the best witness. Again, how to be the best at reporting incidents to the police department, what it means to prosecute or not, and how we can or can't help. A lot about the help team, which is an excellent resource that we really recommend. And we'll get you a contact phone number to call them, and then overall summary. And then we can move to the next. Okay. So as far as neighborhood resource officers, our city is broken into 4 areas. They're basically beats. Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4. And it's probably, for the people listening, it's probably a very good idea to get an email and a phone number for these neighborhood resource officers that are the officers assigned to that beat. So for the beat 1 area, kind of the beach area, 3rd Street Promenade, Santa Monica Pier, Ocean Avenue, Main Street, that would be beat 1. And it's Officer Hollowell. There's a phone number for him and an extension. Halima, I think his email might be in other areas of this presentation, but Halima can put that in the chat. For beat 2, that's the south end of the city. There's 2 of us officers assigned to it. It's myself, Officer Navarro, and Officer Galvan. Again, that's the south end of the city from south of Pico. There goes our phone numbers. And Halima, at the very end, you'll see our emails. It's basically our name with, it'll be edgar.navarro@santamonica.gov. That'll be included at the end of the presentation. Beat 3, kind of the mid-city area of Santa Monica, kind of the Pico neighborhood, the business area. the NRO for that area is Officer Medina. There goes her phone number, and then the last beat, which would be the north end of the city, Montana, San Vicente, that area. That officer's Officer Alpert. There goes his phone number, and then, like I said, we'll include the email in the chat, and we can move to the next one. Okay. This is what my partner was talking about as far as our crime prevention coordinators. These are our 2 civilian employees in the city. Like Robert said, very important in our office, and they do most of the work of reaching out to the residents in the community. Myself, my partners, Officer Alpert, all of them, we're always going out to the field. We're doing enforcement. We're doing presentations. So we stay busy out of the office. We kind of, that's our preference. And it's really important that you know the name and the phone number and the email for the R2 crime prevention coordinators. That would be Susie Lockwood, and that would be for the Beat 1 and Beat 4 area, which is again the north end of the city and the Ocean downtown area. That's Susie Lockwood. Her phone number and her email and her extension is included on there. And then you also have Halima's, her name, her email, and her phone number. And she's the crime prevention coordinator for the B2 and B3. So again, Mid-City, Sunset Park. The reason I emphasize their phone numbers and their contact information, so often an incident might happen. So you might hear airships, you may hear police activity, say on a Saturday night, and you know there's activity out there. The officers are limited on how much information they can give you because they're busy on perimeters, they're doing different things. So you may not be able to get much information. Sometimes on Santa Monica alerts, it's some of you are signed up for Santa Monica alerts, and sometimes you'll get some of that information. But if what will happen is, so on Saturday you don't get much of that information, you can always call on Monday or Tuesday, and you can talk to either Halima or Susie and say, hey, I live in that area. I know the officers were busy. I wasn't able to get information, but I wanted to know what happened in my neighborhood, because that's kind of how we are in Santa Monica. We want to know, we're interested in what's happening in our community, and we want some of those details that may not be available that night. So you can always call in, send an email and say, hey, what was happening? And then they'll follow through with as much detail as if there's a pending investigation or whatever they can give you, they will. So really important phone numbers to have, and emails. Because again, they're going to be the people who can devote the time and get the details for you as best as they can. So that would, so we can move to the next slide. Okay. As far as the communication center, so I've been a police officer for, I don't know, close to 23, 24 years. And part of my time I spent in the 911 center. I was a supervisor for the 911 dispatchers. So I got really good at knowing how calls come in, the technology, how they triage calls. And that's why giving out this information to me is I think really effective on getting the best police services you can. So starting off with, people are always ask, hey, should I call the non-emergency number or should I call the emergency number? So in front of you, you'll see the 8491 number, which most people have that number. And we recommend that you put it in your cell phone. And so the people ask, should we call that number or should we be calling 911? A little background on the technology. So back in 2000, when I started as a police officer, if you called 911 from your cell phone, it went to the California Highway Patrol. And the California Highway Patrol would transfer you to whatever police department or whatever city you're calling from. So it would be a delay waiting for CHP, and then you'd get connected to Santa Monica PD. Luckily, I think it took us 5-7 years before we got the technology that now I'm going to say 99% of the time when you call around the city, it's going to go straight to our police dispatch. It doesn't go to CHP. The only exception is if you are close to the freeway. Then there's a potential that it might go to the California Highway Patrol. So we always said back then, program the 8491 number on your cell phone so that when you call, it goes directly to our police dispatch and you don't have to go through the loop of CHP back to us. We still recommend it. You might be outside the city for whatever reason. So we still recommend that you program it into your phone. Okay, now talking about non-emergency or emergency. So you might have an incident that you feel, well, I feel it's an emergency, but maybe the police department doesn't feel it's an emergency. Do not have a dilemma on when you're making that call. If you call and you feel that it's an emergency to you, use 911. Now, I have gotten calls in the communication center where it's a neighbor calling, hey, my neighbor's got a loud party, and they call on 911. Now, I really wouldn't qualify that as an emergency, but it's something important to them. So on something like that, we're still going to take the call. We're not going to admonish a person, but we may put them on hold in case a 911 call comes through. So don't go into a dilemma and don't delay your call because you're not sure, should I call 8491 or should I call 911? Just call, if your gut instinct feels it's an emergency, call 911. And if you decide to call 8491, that's fine as well. Either way, it goes to the same dispatchers. So the dispatchers inside our communication center, they've got their headset set up, and what the computer does, the only distinction that it will do is if the calls come in at exactly the same time, then of course it's going to send the 911 call to the dispatcher first. And then the other call will be put on hold or go to another dispatcher. But it doesn't matter because it ultimately goes to those same dispatchers. So there isn't like a different room, a different level of service. It's going to be the same service. So hopefully that answers all the questions as far as emergency, non-emergency. And at the end of this, if people have more questions, please let me know and I'll clarify if I need to. Something that's important, something that's important about reporting parties when you're calling. This is something that we get these questions, but we just need some clarification so that we can get the best information and we can be clear on what's the best information you should give. So when you're a reporting party, your information, your information is always confidential. So if I call about my neighbor and I'm calling because they're having a loud party, by our normal procedure, we will not tell that neighbor, hey, it was your next door neighbor that called. We're always going to generalize so that people don't know who called. So as normal, as we normally hand a normal protocol, we don't give information. Now, if I call and I call about my neighbor and I say my name is Edgar Navarro, my address is this, my phone number. It's going to be included in the call. Again, it's confidential. It's not information we're going to give out. But yes, it will be included in the radio call. Some people are like, I don't want anyone to know. I don't want the dispatchers. I don't want police officers to know. I don't want anyone to know. So yes, you do have the right to be anonymous. So we respect that. But we also, we want to be able to help out and get more information. So for us, it's ideal if you do give us your information, because again, we're promising that we're not looking to give out your information, and we're not going to be telling people. And also what will happen is people will say, well, I can give you my information, but I don't want the officer to come knock on my door. Because if we as a police officer come knock on your door, then okay, now your neighbor knows you're the one that called. So it could be a party, it could be an assault, it could be something, you could be calling about a homeless person down the street, and maybe you don't want them to know that you called. An option that's available for you is you can say, I want the police officer to call me, but I don't want them knocking on my door, because I don't want that other person to know that I'm the caller. So as long as you mention that, we'll respect your request. Sometimes it's important that we as police officers meet with you, because maybe you're the victim of a crime. Maybe your neighbor has this party every Saturday night, and now it's the 8th weekend that it's been ongoing, and now we have to do a criminal complaint. One of the things that I will do as an officer is I'll get on the phone and I'll call you and I'll say, hey, we want to do a criminal complaint because this person has had parties every Saturday for 8 weeks straight, and we want a criminal complaint to go to the city attorney. But I do need to verify who you are and get information from you. So sometimes what we will ask is we'll say, hey, can you meet us in the parking lot of Rite Aid? Or can you meet us at the business park 3-4 blocks away from your house, so that nobody knows that you're meeting with us, no one sees it. We're at a another area where they're not seeing this, and now we can get your information. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's a lot of information as far as being a reporting party when you're making that call. And again, the difference between giving your information, making it confidential, as opposed to just being anonymous and not giving any information, where we will honor that as well. One other option that's important for people who want to file reports that a lot of people don't know about is that if you want to say, unfortunately, we've had a lot of catalytic converter thefts that have happened in the last months, and people want to file a report. But let's assume it's a Saturday night, we're really busy. We don't want you to have to wait at home for 5 hours for us to come by to take that report. So you can always ask the dispatcher, yes, I want to file this report, but I want you to call me when the officer's on their way. As long as you can be back home in 10, 15 minutes maximum, then you'll meet the officer there, so that now you're just looking at your cell phone waiting for that call, so that you're not stuck at home having to wait for the officer. So that's just a little trick that you can do so you're not stuck at home. Okay, we can move to the next one. Just same thing on so like I mentioned on anonymous. Our hesitation with being anonymous is it's absolutely your right, and we're going to honor that if you don't want to give us your information, but it does limit our ability to help. So let's assume that you're a victim. We're just hypothetically, maybe a homeless person assaulted somebody, and now that person calls it in and they want to stay anonymous. Well, we can't take any police action against that person. We can't arrest that person. We can't take further action on that incident if we're not able to talk to that victim. Maybe for us to make an arrest, we may need a signature for a misdemeanor arrest. So all of that is limited if you are adamant about staying anonymous. So just keep in mind the other options, being able to meet with you away from the location, and also the fact that we can call you. Other options available for people who want to stay anonymous and don't want to give out information. The narcotics tip line is fantastic. So we still have before we had a team that was doing all narcotics. Now I think it's a part-time team, but they're still getting information. So if you're in an area where maybe there is narcotic sales, that type of activity, you can call that number. Never have to. If you want to give your information, like a phone number, so that they can reach out to you for more information, great. But if you don't want to give that, you don't have to. But that's the phone number on the screen for that. Now, an ongoing investigation. Maybe you heard of a hit and run that happened in your neighborhood and you know who it was. I don't want to get involved, I just want to give detectives the information. That phone number there is for the ongoing investigation. So it's 458-8449 that's on the screen. Again, call, leave a message, give all your information, and again, leave your contact information where they can reach out to you by phone if you'd allow that. If you don't, that's okay too. For child abuse, I know that's all sensitive to all of us. Maybe you're hearing a neighbor or somebody, maybe you're hearing some screaming, something that might be child abuse. We would prefer on that to get the call either on 911 or the 8491, the non-emergency. And even if you stay anonymous, as long as you give us an address and the very best details, it allows us to start an investigation. Go knock on a door. We're absolutely, with the reporting party, we're not going to give any information. And we're going to say, hey, people are hearing what sounds like a child crying, possible abuse. So we need to ask these questions. Now, excuse me. So it would begin our police investigation on it. Separately, you can call the Department of Child and Family Services. Again, that number you can call and remain anonymous. It's the 800-540-4000. All you do, you call, most likely you'll be talking to somebody. I believe it's staffed 24 hours a day. We're always calling that number because the social workers there, they're responsible for the care of the kids. We're responsible for the enforcement. So we will call them when there is possible suspected child abuse. And 24 hours a day, we're always reaching somebody, and they'll send a social worker to kind of overlap the work that we do to make sure the child is safe. And on this number, you from the public can call, give that information, remain anonymous, or give your information however you want to, but that number is available to you. Okay, we can move to the next. Bobby, you want to give out this information?
Oh yeah, sure. So these are other frequent phone numbers that we use quite often, so that now you guys will have them available for you. So code enforcement, if there's an issue with loud noise, code enforcement has the decibel readers. They'll come out and they'll do a decibel reader test. Code enforcement does all the vendors, the vending on and around the pier. That's all code enforcement. So if you see something vending noise, like exposed wires, something to that effect. That's code enforcement. Leaf blowers, that's all code enforcement. They can write municipal code violations. They can cite the individuals for certain things. So code enforcement, parking enforcement. If there's a car parked on the red, if there's a car in a handicap spot, if there's a car parked in front of your house for 3 days, and you don't know whose car it is, parking enforcement will mark it. They'll tag it with the date, and then they'll come back within 72 hours, and that could be towed. If you have a question about parking permits, if your parking permit has expired, if you need to know on certain holidays, they don't enforce traffic sites, but on some holidays they do. You have to read the parking sign. If the parking sign says enforce 24 hours a day, then that parking meter, then there could be a parking enforcement officer that will come by and give you a ticket. So if you have questions regarding parking, homeless services, you just dial 211 on your phone. And then homeless and mental health, the LA HOP. So 211 and LA HOP are kind of intertwined. So if you call 211, you're going to get LA HOP. LA HOP is for homeless individuals to get resources, social workers, shelters, open shelters, ways to get help for the homeless. Santa Monica Services 311. So a 311 request would be if there's a mattress in your alley, if there's a couch in the alley, a couch on the sidewalk, you do a 311 request. The 311 request will get vetted to which division or which department it has to go to. If there's a couch, if there's bulk trash, it'll be sent to city yards. City yards will get the 311 and they will handle it. So there's a difference in 311 and calling the police. If there's an immediate emergency, you need to call our dispatch or 911, as Edgar said. 311 is if something that can wait a couple days for the correct division to get to. If there's graffiti, call 311. Trash. If there's a homeless person sleeping in a tent on the sidewalk, don't do 311 because we might not get that 311 request for 3 days. So then you're going to call us and say, I did a 311 and no one's done anything for 3 days. Well, it takes a little bit for the 311 system to get vetted out. So an immediate response, dispatch or 911. And if it's something that can wait 2 or 3 days to be solved, that's a 311 request. It's you can do 311 online, or you can dial 311. The info at santamonica.gov is the online 311. Building and safety. If there's a construction complaint, a construction noise, something with, and you think there's something that's being done without a permit, some type of construction, building and safety, you can notify us if somebody is working before the construction hours or after the construction hours. Dispatch can send an officer out there to mitigate the problem. And also you can notify building and safety with the address of the location. Building and safety will send an inspector over there to see what's going on, and they will let them know about, we'll let them know about the construction noise rules, but they will let them know as well. Building and safety they'll do inspections, they'll pull the permit, they'll shut down the construction site, whatever it may be. We can't really do that. Building and safety can't. So construction problems, things like that, building and safety. Let's see. You can go to the next slide. Okay, the help team, the homeless liaison program. So it's 6 to 8 officers and 1 sergeant. They're sworn officers, and their daily goal, their daily task is really homeless related issues only. They don't respond to radio calls. They're really here for homeless related issues. We have a Department of Mental Health clinician that rides with them. If we need, or if they need to put an individual on a psychiatric hold, or if they're unable to care for their own safety, our DMH social worker will put them on a hold, and we would take them to a hospital. The DMH, our DMH partners have way more resources for hospitals than we do as officers. So right now there's 1 clinician working with them. They start at 4 in the morning, and at 4 in the morning they do operations where there's like sitting and lying inside in a doorway in the downtown area. It used to be downtown area only, so just think of like the promenade and the mall area. The sitting and lying in a doorway got extended to the Lincoln corridor, the Pico corridor, Santa Monica Boulevard corridor, Wilshire, Montana. So they go out early in the morning and enforce the sleeping or lying in a doorway. They also are enforcing park closures. The parks are closed, all the parks except for Palisades Park. Palisades Park closes at midnight. So midnight to 6 a.m., you're really not supposed to be in a park. All the other parks close at 11 p.m. So 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Parks are closed. So they check the parks and enforce what they need to. So initial efforts to find homeless services, programs, and housing. We have resources as officers. They have way more resources than we do. They work with our multidisciplinary street teams, the HMST street teams. Multidisciplinary street teams it's a group of 4 or 5 individuals. One might be a clinician, one might be a social worker, one might be from the Department of Mental Health, one might be someone from housing. So the multidisciplinary street teams, they're tasked with contacting homeless individuals, getting them the resources they need, putting them into housing, getting them set up with any type of programs that they need, whether it be food stamps, unemployment, social security assistance. So there's the HMSC team, there's a C3 team, there's like 4 different multidisciplinary street teams out there who work with the help team. The help team came up with an acronym called HUG, H-U-G, High Utilizer Group. So the High Utilizer Group is the 25 identified individuals who use the most services, whether it be police, fire, or the hospitals. So the street teams, the people concerned, the HMSC teams, they have these 25 names. If our homeless liaison team contacts one of those 25, they call the street teams. They come over and they deal with it. So the homeless liaison team has all these resources, all these programs. They're very well known throughout the state, throughout the country. Police departments come from all over the place to learn from our homeless liaison team. So their goal is not necessarily enforcement. We or anybody, we can't arrest our way out of homelessness. It's education. It's getting individuals placed into housing, getting them, putting them into a rehab, whatever it means. Whatever services we have is our goal first. to address their needs. After and if they're not accepting a housing, if they're not accepting the services we provide, then we have to go to enforcement. But homelessness is not a crime. There's a lot of things that it's troubling to the eye, but it's not necessarily a crime. So enforcement is the last, is really the last step. We try to advise as to what a homeless individual can or can't do, as far as sleeping on the sidewalk or in a park, or camping with a tent or with a tarp. We address them with education first. We let them know, hey, today's Monday, you can't sleep in a tent. Tuesday, sir, you can't sleep in a tent. Wednesday, sir, you can't be in a tent. Thursday, now you're getting a ticket. So we try to education first, last step enforcement. So their phone number is up here, 458-8953. That is it'll be a recording, but leave a message. You leave a long message if you like, and it could be very specific, and they'll respond, and they will take care of what the problem is. If it's an ongoing issue, let them know. They'll put it on their periodic checklist. If it's somebody sleeping in a parking lot, let them know. They'll contact them at 4 a.m. They'll address the situation, but leave a message and they will get back to you. They may not always call you back unless you absolutely request it, but believe me, they'll get to the problem that you notified them. So Help Team is a great resource. And let's see, go to the next slide, Halima. Okay, observe and report. So if you're out and about and you see somebody, you see somebody acting aggressive or having an outburst, we don't want you to interject yourself. There's a reason why we wear a vest, a belt, and have radios and have all the stuff that we wear, all the 25, 30 pounds of stuff that we wear. There's a reason why we have all that. We don't want you to interject and get hurt. Just watch from a safe distance. Call our dispatch, identify what is happening. Try to identify, if you can, who's the aggressor, who's the victim. Let them know you're a witness, or let them know you're a victim. Does the individual have any weapons? Look for if you have to, just from a safe distance, watch where they're going. You don't have to know if somebody's going north, south, east, or west. Edgar and I are always joking. Edgar and I are from here. I always know which way west is because I always go to the beach. But there's a lot of people that don't know north, south, east, west. One of my kids, he drives. He cannot tell you which way is north. So if you don't know what direction it is, all you have to say is he's walking towards the Bob's Market, or he's walking towards Marine Park, or he's walking towards John Adams. He's walking towards Mount Olive, right? So just give and then our dispatchers will know, oh, he's going north, he's going south. The dispatchers will figure that out. You just have to give just identify a point of reference, and we can figure out which way the person is going. Don't worry about if you don't know north, south, east, or west. And you can take notes, jot them down, use your phone, send yourself a text message, so you can. So when we contact you, you'll be able to tell us what happened. So we want you to be a good witness. Call 9 when you speak to the dispatchers. We want you to give a best description as you can. The people involved, what they're wearing, if they have a weapon, if they're in a car, if they're not in a car. If you can get any identifying marks from a car, does it have tinted windows? Is there a sticker in the window? Are there dents? If you can identify anything from the license plate. You don't have to tell us that it's a Nissan Sentra or a Toyota Camry. You can say it's a blue four-door sedan. Okay, we'll start looking for a blue four-door sedan. Oh, and by the way, it has a sticker of Mammoth on the back. Okay, well, do you know the license plate? No, but a blue four-door sedan with a sticker of Mammoth on the back. Okay, that's might be easier to find than a license plate because it's a little more identifiable. The best and most appropriate information. The higher the priority, the faster the response. Somebody has a bat, let us know that the person has a bat. Somebody has some weapon, let us know. If what we don't want to happen is if, let's say, for example, there's a fight, but you've called dispatch and it's been 5 minutes, no one has responded. We don't want you to call back and say, somebody has a knife, somebody has a bat. We don't want you to give misinformation to get so that we respond faster. We don't want that to happen because then we're going to get there. We're going to point guns. We're going to point tasers at people. And lo and behold, well, they never had a bat. Somebody just said, and it happens. People say, oh, he has a bat. He has a gun, just to get us there faster. We don't want that to happen. Give us the appropriate information so we can, so our dispatchers can prioritize the call, and we can get there and mitigate the problem. And as Edgar said before, make yourself available when we arrive. We can contact you via telephone if you don't want the suspect, or if you don't want anybody there seeing the police talk to you. We can talk to you by phone. We can meet you around the corner. We can meet you, wherever it may be. But if you're a witness or a victim, we need you to stay on scene and to be available. If you witnessed a purse snatch and you call dispatch and say, no, I don't want to identify the person, I'm going to leave. Well, we just Edgar and I maybe caught the person, but now we don't have anybody to identify if that person is the crook or not. So make every attempt to remain on scene so we can speak to you to get clarification on what happened, and you can point out or be a witness to what actually happened. We can go to the next one, Halima. Summary. Want to give the summary, Edgar? You're on mute, Edgar. You're on mute. There you go.
Sorry. And as far as information that Officer Galvan was saying, the information that we want when you call in something. And we were talking about how to get the fastest and best police response. At the end of the day, the dispatchers, they're going to get the information, they're going to create a radio call, and then they're going to dispatch that call. Those calls are that they're getting, they're triaging depending on how urgent they are. Now, like Officer Galvan mentioned, if the person has a bat, or if there's a weapon, or if there's an active fight happening, as opposed to the fight's already over, all of that is going to change the priority on the call. So the dispatchers are talking, they're talking to you, they're getting information, and they're going to create a radio call. The priority on that radio call for our system is anywhere between 0 and 7. Surprisingly, 0 is the highest priority. So for example, somebody is inside their house, there's a burglar entering through a window. That's called a hot prop burglary. That's a priority 0. That is the top priority. Every officer, wherever they're at, they're breaking for that call. And then it goes 0, 1 if it's less urgent, 2, and then it goes all the way down to 7. Calls that are report calls end up being priority 4. So that's why when you call, giving us as much information as you can is optimal, so that we can get officers out there sooner. If the person was showing that they were aggressive, maybe they've walked onto your front lawn and they're swinging a bat, or they're swinging their arms. Maybe they're having some type of manic episode. We want to know that. One of the things that people make a mistake on is they want to quickly get on the phone and they want to disconnect, because they think the sooner they disconnect, the sooner the police will respond. Just understand, the way it works is the dispatcher is getting the information, they create a radio call, and that call is dispatched. That's happening as they're collecting information. So they don't have to wait until you hang up to send that call, as they say. They can continue getting information. So don't be so quick to disconnect with the dispatcher. Maybe you call and you say, hey, there's an active fight and there's 3 people involved. And then now that the dispatchers created the call, there's police officers on their way. Now we want to know what the people look like. We want to know which one is the aggressor. We want to know which one has the bat, which one has the knife, where they've moved to, where they've run to, all of that, because that's going to modify the call, and it's information that the officers are getting as they're responding out there. So that's why Officer Galvan mentioned a lot of things that we'd like for you to mention to us, because at the end of the day, we want to get you the best police response and the fastest police response. And the best way we can do that is by getting all of that information. So just keep that in mind so that they can prioritize your call correctly. Okay. So ultimately, we want you to call us when you need us. If you think that it's a police issue, if it's not, we'll let you know otherwise. But if you think it's us, call us. We don't mind transferring you if we need to. And tell us everything that we can see, the stuff we just talked about now. If you call our communication center, nobody is perfect. We as police officers aren't perfect. Me and myself and my partner, we're not perfect. We can make mistakes. If you're calling the communication center and you don't feel you're getting the service that you deserve and that you think you should be getting, know that in the communication center, there's a supervisor on the floor, as they call it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you're calling on Saturday night and you're hearing some loud domestic violence, and now it's been a longer time than you think it should take, then you can always call and say, hey, we put this call in and no one's been dispatched. Or maybe the dispatcher that spoke to us, maybe we didn't feel like we got the very best service. Can we speak to a supervisor? Again, they're going to be on the floor. You can speak to them. Then you can get the service that you should be getting, and you can hopefully take some corrective measures so that kind of stuff doesn't happen again. Lastly, our office, Halima and Susie, they're in the office. They're always willing to give out information. We're kind of your go-to folks. When something happens, you don't have the information, you don't have to feel bad asking. You give us a call, say, hey, what happened Saturday night, whatever, and we'll give you all the details we can give you. At the end of the day, this is your community. We want you to feel connected and to know what's happening in your community, and we're happy to give out as much information as detectives or as much as the investigation would allow us to give. So that's kind of the totality of my presentation. I hope I included all the phone numbers that I think would be important for you to have. We talked about the help team because they're a great task force. So there's a lot of information there. If there's anything that you heard that maybe you want more clarification, please follow up with some questions. I'd love to, me and my partner would love to clarify anything that was confusing. And you can always give us a call during the week, and then we can give you more answers. But for now, we can go into any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was also helpful. I think Nick put a question in the chat that I also had. How is the 211 number different from the HLP number, the 4588953? Like, what are the different uses of those?
Okay, so 211 is more for just getting county, any regional services for homeless. So maybe somebody is homeless and they want some services, resources. They can call that number. Or maybe you see someone and you're like, hey, I'd love to be able to get some services for them. You call the 211 number. You can probably overlap with our help team. The help team is a police department task force. It's specific to those police officers. I would say they're probably the better option, because if they don't respond that same day, maybe it'll be the next day, but they're going to reach out. They probably will know the homeless person because they know all of them in the city. They have a social worker with them. I think there's a lot of resources that they can do that are pretty automatic. So yeah, they come from different sources. I think you can overlap and do both. But of course, you know, I'm a little biased, but I'm going to say our help team should be quite helpful.
Great. And then if you come across a homeless person in need of urgent care, so for example, if the person is like passed out on the street and they're hurt, or in crisis, but they're not hurting anyone, but they seem very in need of help, what number or how should someone handle that situation?
Yeah, those are so those are the 4 questions that you sent us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for that one, so I'll address those. I'll address one. Question number 1, I'll read the question 1 and question 3. 2 and 4 are kind of the same, but let's start with number 1. So you come across somebody who's in need of urgent care, they're injured, unconscious. That's a 911 call. Call 911, speak to our dispatchers. Some of our dispatchers are cross-trained in fire dispatch, and some are not. But our fire and police dispatchers are in the same room. So when you get 911, they'll say, what's your emergency? You'll say that somebody's injured or in need of medical care. They'll transfer you to the fire dispatcher. The fire dispatcher will ask you some questions to get the description of the subject, what the symptoms are, things like that. If they think it's a medical call, they'll dispatch the paramedics. Most of the time when paramedics go, they send us with them in case the person acts up. So in some cases we get there first, and we can identify that yes, this is a medical need, or no, the individual is intoxicated and we may just have to take them to jail. So they'll be treated at the scene by paramedics, and they'll be transported to Santa Monica Hospital to St. John's. If it's more critical, they would go to UCLA Westwood. The hospitals also have social workers. All the emergency rooms have social workers who are in touch with the C3 team, the HMST team, the people concerned. So they will get that individual services. If the person's been at the hospital before, they'll have a record of them being there. they most likely will know if the person has received services or is getting services, and then the social worker at the hospital will reach out directly to the people concerned, St. Joseph Center, whoever it may be. So something like that, that's 911. And then we'll address it from there. Let's see. I'll skip number 2, because I'll do 2 and 4 together. Number 3, what do you do, or who do you call if an unhoused person is violent, screaming, or threatening someone? What will that person do once we call the number, correct?
Yeah.
So that's if you see someone who is violent or screaming or acting out, that's the same. That's a 911. We need to get there and address that behavior for the safety of the community, for the safety of the individual. Same thing, provide as much information as you can about the subject from a safe distance. Don't interject yourself. We don't want you to get hurt. We'll be sent there to take all the necessary steps to mitigate the problem. If you're a victim or a witness, stay on scene, make yourself available by phone. If it's a crime that's been committed, so what will happen to the person? If it's a crime that's been committed, the individual will be arrested. What I forgot to mention about the help team, we have a program called ATI. It's called Alternative to Incarceration. It used to be only homeless, but now it's everybody. Everybody who gets arrested has an ATI. It's a form we fill out. So let's just use a homeless individual for an example. If they're arrested for public intoxication, ATI is Alternative to Incarceration. We have ATI personnel at the station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our jail will notify the ATI personnel, that there's someone in the jail. ATI will go speak to them and say, okay, sir, we see you've been arrested for public intoxication. We have a rehabilitation center for you. If you accept the rehabilitation center and stay in the program for 60 days, your arrest, whatever it was for, will be wiped clean. But you have to enter the program and stay in the program. If somebody comes in and has a mental health crisis, we'll say, we're going to take you to a hospital. We're going to take you to a psychiatric facility, but you have to stay in that facility for 60 days and complete the program. If you do, let's say you got arrested for stealing something from Target or something from Trader Joe's, but they're having a manic episode, perhaps. If they go into the psychiatric, facility, that theft that they got arrested for is wiped away. So ATI, so what will happen to them? Everybody has a chance for ATI, and it's been successful. I can't tell you the exact numbers. The help team personnel knows the exact numbers of people who have gone in and who have completed the program, but so we have that. And if it's not a crime, and if someone is just needs psychiatric help, we will take them to a hospital. We'll take them to UCLA Westwood. We'll take them to Harbor UCLA, and they'll be put on we'll write a psychiatric hold. They'll be held for, a psychiatric hold when we write the hold, it's 72 hours, but the doctor can speak to the person and release the hold after 10 hours, whatever, it just depends. So that's that one. Okay, so number 2, what are the appropriate things to do if you want to help an unhoused individual who you meet on the street? Buy them water, buy them a snack, ask them if they need anything aside from money. And so question 4 is, I want to help an unhoused population in general, but it's overwhelming. What are the small steps I can take? How can I volunteer my time? How do I stay up to date? Meetups and organize events aimed to help and empower unhoused individuals. So if you want to buy somebody water, food, or a snack, please. That's fine. That's fine with us. If that's what you want to do. I think giving money is maybe not the best approach, but if you want to buy something to eat, feel free. That's outstanding. We're not going to tell anyone not to help somebody in need. Some of the steps you can take helping is you can contact and Halima, we can have Halima put the contact information for people concerned. People concerned, have you heard of OPCC, Ocean Park Community Center? OPCC is now people concerned. It's the shelter on 5th and Olympic. It's the shelter on Cloverfield in Michigan. So you contact people concerned, and you can volunteer by making meals, by making sandwiches, by passing out sandwiches at 5th and Olympic. You can volunteer. They make sandwiches and they pass out sandwiches in Reed Park. You can donate your clothing to the people concerned. You can donate clothing to the Salvation Army on 11th and Olympic. The Salvation Army on 11th and Olympic, the individuals who are working there, if you've ever dropped off anything there in the alley, the individuals that are there that pick up your property are all in the program at Salvation Army. They're not getting paid. They're there going through the program. They're living there for free, but what they have to do is they have to work in the store. So Salvation Army, people concerned, are all ways and organizations where you can volunteer and donate your time. Thanksgiving, St. Monica's has a huge Thanksgiving meal and Christmas Eve. I don't know if it's Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, but St. Monica's as well has a few different meals that they provide. I think those does that answer both 2 and 4?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think someone else just dropped another question in the chat. I can read it for you.
Right.
It says, if we see someone laying on the sidewalk and we can't tell if they're just sleeping peacefully or passed out or need more help, what would you advise doing in that situation?
That's the same thing. You could call dispatch, and dispatchers they'll send an officer out there to address it. And I would say after you notify dispatch, tell them that you would like the officer to contact you by phone after, because there's some change in the law that has occurred with homelessness and with camping and sleeping on. So if somebody is just laying on the sidewalk on top of a blanket using an umbrella for shade, well, that's not camping. That doesn't count as camping. That doesn't count as, there's case law, the case law is from Idaho. And just laying on the sidewalk, as long as there's 3 feet of space for you or I to walk by them, then they're just a person laying on the sidewalk. But you call dispatch, our officers will get there, our officers will address it, they'll make sure they're service connected, meaning are they connected to any of our service providers, and it'll go from there.
Great, thanks. I think Catherine Ford has a question. Catherine, do you want to pose your question?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Officers, my question is regarding whether the city has a plan. Should the internet go out? Should cell phones go down? That type of thing. And what are we as citizens to do in that state of emergency?
Ooh, that's a good question. No internet? Oh my God, it would be disaster. How would I watch?
Exactly.
I don't know, Edgar. What about from dispatch?
You know, I think let me reach out to the Office of Emergency Management. Excuse me, and let's see if I can come back with some information on that. I can tell you offhand, we don't know, but that is something. I know that they have emergency preparedness and stuff like that they handle. So let me do a little research on it.
Okay.
I'll get that information out to Sean, and then we'll circulate it back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Edgar, one thing I remember when I took the training years ago, I'm part of the OEM thing, but that interestingly, even when the voice cell phone fails, the text is usually available. That it was back then. I don't know if it still is, but check on that. So you can always try to text.
I don't.
But Santa Monica, sign up for Santa Monica alerts. So you can just Google Santa Monica alerts, and if you have a cell phone, and tell me how there's a car accident on Pico, there's a car accident on PCH, and we have to block a street, or if there's a perimeter, and there's going to be some type of traffic congestion or a large scale event, our watch commanders, our lieutenants, dispatchers will send out a Santa Monica alert saying PCH is closed for the next 3 hours, Pico's closed for the next 2 hours, whatever it may be. So you can sign up. I can't remember the website off the top of my head, but I think you just Google Santa Monica alerts and you put in your information, and it's all cell phone based. So if something happens, you'll get an alert to your cell phone.
I do think though that nowadays, if the cell phones go out, there won't be any texting either. I think it's going to be completely out.
Yeah,
That's my understanding, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll have Edgar. We'll look into it.
Thank you so much.
Sure, of course.
Danielle, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have got two. There was recently a situation where there was a gentleman sleeping at the entrance to a building in Virginia Park where kids are going in and out for a music program. And nobody knew what to do. So I'm curious, how does it work if that's the situation where they're right there, either a school or a park building, and it's an event where children are practicing music or whatever program they're involved in?
I think it comes down to what the violation is. So we want to be very sensitive and we want to be very appropriate in our response, in that we're treating them just like everybody else. So if the homeless person is somewhere where, if there's a homeless person inside Virginia Park and they're laying down in an area of the grass where it would be typical for families or for people to lay on the grass, then obviously there's no violation there. Now, in terms of a building that might have an event for involving kids, where now they're probably going to be somewhere where they're maybe blocking access to the building. There's a bunch of different options on that. When the person calls into the police department, all the different people that would respond to that would be, there's a library service officer that works the park that could respond to something like that, potentially contact the person, ask them to move, and clear the pathway. There's also public service officers that work Virginia Park, and they can also make contact with the person. Those two people I just mentioned, those are civilian staff, not sworn. But in addition to that, our police officers can respond to that. So at the end of the day, it comes down to, we're going to find out what the violation is. If there is a violation of the law, something that it would be illegal for someone homeless or not homeless, then we'll make contact with the person. We'll make every effort to get the person to move. And that tends to be a frequent call, not just at Virginia Park, but Clover Park, Hotchkiss Park, Reed Park. So yeah, it just comes down to giving us information and letting us respond.
I have another question. Can I ask that now, Aaron, or you want to take the other one first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I have a question. I was recently told by our community liaison that we no longer have a vice division or a narcotics division. We had an episode in my building 3 weeks ago with a tenant who was on heavy duty hallucinogens, who brings them in from the Amazon jungle. And he went after his wife, his infant daughter, and his toddler, and his dog with a gigantic knife. She ran away from him into the courtyard. Another tenant came out. They brought her in and the children into the apartment, and the guy came out and dealt with him. He had a huge knife. They were all over the courtyard. I watched the whole thing. I called it in. Another tenant called it in. In fact, a few of us called it in. Several guys came within a few minutes. It took 3 or 4 of them to subdue him. It was serious business. It resulted, I called to follow up on it, and I was told by Officer Rodriguez that there was no arrest made and that there was a 5150 for a 72-hour lockup, and that he was off scot-free because none of the victims were willing to make a report. And there's a few things. One, he then told me that we no longer have a vice division or a narcotics division, and that there was nothing he could do. It was my understanding that the laws for domestic violence were changed years ago, and that we no longer need the victim to do that the police can do that themselves, because so many women and people back off because it's family and they make excuses for them. This guy's out of his mind. I mean, he's not going to get help in 2 weeks at some fancy rehab, which is where he is now. He had come at me the week before. He stopped short. He didn't have a weapon, and he stopped short because I stood up to him, and he backed off. I guess I'm a pretty scary person, so that worked in my favor. But, he's coming back here, and he's not a well guy. He's mentally ill, and I don't believe that anything's going to come of this, except we're going to wait for it to happen again. And I'm very upset that it's been handled this way. And I had a very unpleasant conversation with Officer Rodriguez about it. Can you help me with that? Because, he's coming back any day now. And I'm in his crosshairs, because I'm the only one that absolutely doesn't buy his act for 5 minutes. So, what can we do? Because the guy is crazy, and he has knives, and he's nuts. What can we do?
So something like that, first of all, that's a felony that was described. So I can't tell you, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you what the actions were of the officers and were they appropriate. And I don't know, because I don't have the details. I wasn't out there. But for moving forward, anything of that behavior is reportable. My recommendation is, so when he does become disruptive, confrontational, aggressive, any of that, you can call us. And like my partner, Officer Galvan, said, you can always ask to speak to the officer afterwards. This is immediately after the incident. So if you call and you're saying, hey, my neighbor is being confrontational, he approached me, he did this, he did that, you can ask to speak to the police officer afterwards and go, what actions did you take? And if you disagree with their actions, you can have that conversation with that officer or his supervisor. And that will make sure that they're doing everything they can. Sometimes, yes, if we have a misdemeanor where people don't want to stay anonymous and they're not going to cooperate, then yeah, there's a limitation. Domestic violence is that exception, that most domestic violence are all felonies. So it's something where we as the police officers make that arrest. So again, I would just recommend report it to us, have have the officers report back to you as far as what they did. That way, hopefully you're content with the actions that they take.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me just briefly touch on, yes, our narcotics officers and our vice officers, they're in the same office. The due to deployment reasons and shortages in investigations, they temporarily dissolved those units and put those officers into our detective division. But our vice officer, they're still doing vice operations on weekends. They're still doing they're using individuals who are under 21 to buy alcohol at liquor stores. So there's still operations going on. And the narcotic officers who have been moved to investigations are still investigating narcotic offenses, narcotic crimes, cases. They're still prosecuting people for narcotics. We have an officer who's splitting time with the DEA and our detective bureau. He spends 2 days in our station as a detective. He spends 2 days with the DEA. So we still have people doing narcotics and vice. It's just we were moved to a separate detail, but it's still ongoing. So don't think that it's completely gone away. We're still taking care of that.
Okay, thank you. If it's okay with you, I'm going to call you to discuss what happened because I am very concerned.
Sure. Yeah, you can call us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Great. So Kathy has put a question in the chat. She said there have been break-ins in her building, The Shores on Nielsen Way, I believe. She said people are hopping the fences and climbing over the walls, jumping up to balconies and sneaking in the garage. She said other people have brought it up to property management and they have not helped much with prevention. And how can the residents get more help?
Sorry. My recommendation on that is, so we have a crime prevention coordinator, Susie Lockwood. I mentioned her in the slides. She would be great for that. She goes out to buildings and she does what we call a security assessment. So basically they go out to a building, they see how they can reinforce the security, what issues they're having, and they make a lot of recommendations. They're experts in the area of just beefing up the security. They've gone to weeks of specialized training for that kind of thing. They know the equipment and the technology and the features out there to make it safer, to upgrade the security. So they'll see the layout, they'll make some recommendations, then they're going to put all that together into a report. So of course, our recommendations are just that. They're just recommendations. They're not city mandates. But that report is something that the resident can use to give to their property management and go, hey, the police department was out here. We're seeing the security issues. They're also seeing it. And this is a report that they prepared. So it kind of behooves you to make these improvements. So that's something that can be done. All you would have to do is reach out to Susie. Her phone number and her information has already been out there. So hopefully that helps.
I believe Janet has a question. Janet, do you want to ask?
Try to keep the answers short.
Janet, I think you're on mute, but you have your hand up. Okay, I guess we'll skip ahead. Sean brought up that there has been some questions he's heard about streetlight outages throughout Ocean Park. And a few of the questions he's gotten are what is the reason for the streetlight outages, and are there steps that we can take to stop them? And what are the best practices for reporting it, noting that 311 doesn't seem to be getting them fixed?
My recommendation would be, initially, I'm going to say 311. I was on the phone with them, them being the city employees that answer that number, and they're the ones that want that information. They, the lady told me that they're the quickest to be able to get that information out to the offices. But let's assume that maybe these corrections aren't being made fast enough. Our other recommendation would be, if you call 311, you speak to that person, find out what office would be responsible for that. That's probably Public Works. And then you can ask this, for the phone number to not only that office, but to a supervisor in that office. And that way, now you're speaking to a live person and you're saying, hey, we reported this 3 weeks ago and there's lights out everywhere. And maybe they have an explanation for it, or maybe they're not getting them in a timely basis. And, you know, I can't explain why that is. But maybe that would be a faster way and a more responsive way to get service back.
Great, thank you. I believe that's all the questions, unless anyone else has something they want to bring up last minute.
I have one thing. I have one thing to report, Edgar. I don't know if you already know this already, but the other day, one of the neighbors brought up that on the old Budget Market on 4th Street, you know, in Hollister, it's empty now, it's for sale. That apparently there's people sleeping on the roof. They found a way to get up on the roof. Do you know about that? I don't know. But anyway, they were worried because mainly fire, you know, that's always making a fire up there. So that might be something to check on in your rounds.
Thank you. Yeah, me and my partner will follow up on that. Of course, we're going to drop a note to the help team, because chances are they'll probably be out there 4 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, I didn't know about that. We will follow up on that.
All right, Mike.
Great, thank you, Officer Galvan.
Halima.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Janet. I'm sorry. I'm here and I'm on my phone and I'm in another meeting, so I had trouble unmuting. But can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hi everybody, officers. I had a question of, this is sort of a reoccurring event, not the specific, but the general underlying theme. There was a young girl taking tennis lessons at Reed Park, and there was a group of guys smoked out of his effing park, and he said to her, "Don't think I won't rape you." And so the mother called the police, and she was told that unless the guy actually did something, there was nothing they can do about it. And I don't think that's technically true. That's a terrorist threat that is against the law. It threatened to do something like that to a child. And I'm wondering, where do we draw the line here, and what can we do? I mean, that shouldn't be okay under any circumstances for someone to threaten a child like that. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think the beginning part of that was a little cut off, but I think I got the gist of it. So I agree with you. No, that's a crime. It could be criminal threats. It's also juvie annoyance. So I can think of 5 different violations there. That would be something that our police dispatch, I'm not saying that they did it, but going based off what you're saying, they should have created a radio call, had a police officer go out there. At the very least, an officer should have gone out there to investigate, find out, did it actually happen, make contact with the person, and then find out about the young lady. What is she doing out there by herself? Is there anything we can do for her? So there's a lot that in that call that we could have done. So yeah, it's upsetting that we didn't respond to something like that. But yeah, give us a chance. And again, when you call dispatch and you don't feel like you're getting the service that you should be getting, always ask to speak to a supervisor that's on the floor. that can correct if maybe they're not going to send somebody.
Okay, so that's what you would advise citizens to do then, is to say, may I speak to the watch commander, may I speak to your supervisor? Because, you know, a lot of times those situations do escalate. And fortunately, her tennis coach got involved, and literally they had to run to her car and the guy chased them to the car. So that's also the concern in these situations, is that they escalate. So I guess then what you're saying is that citizens should just say, no, I need someone out here. Let me speak to a supervisor. That's what you're recommending, correct?
100%. At the end of the day, if somebody wants service, something like that, I pull my hair out. No, we should be responding to that. No one should be chased out of a park. And yes, there is a watch commander that's available, but the issue there is not a police officer going out there. The issue there is a communication center dispatcher maybe not creating a radio call. So let's make a distinction. You want to speak to the watch commander if there's a issue with the police officer handling a call. But if you have an issue with the dispatcher, then you want to speak to the supervisor, the dispatch supervisor on the floor. That way they can have an officer go out there.
Great. Well, thanks.
Yeah, you guys, it was great. Thank you. Really helpful.
Thank you so much for your time and answering all of our questions. This was very informative.
I'm glad. I'm glad everybody was stayed up late. I'm sorry I didn't expect it to go an hour 45, but if it was helpful, then I'm happy with it.
Yeah, very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Very good. Good night. If there's ever anything else you guys need, let us know.
All
Thanks,
right.
Sean. Thanks, everyone.
I always do.
Bye.